Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tracksuit Thursday, November edition. Quite exciting. I want to let you know I'm on day 4 of a 5-day fast. So things could be a little wonky with my brain and all. Doesn't seem like it's playing here, but we'll see. Oh, we'll do our best to do our best. That's all we can do. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be sporting a new tracksuit today. I'm also back in Florida, where some of my tracksuits are located. When I was in Arizona, didn't bring a whole lot of tracksuits with me for the summer. That's not really what you sport when you're in 104 and 108 degrees. So the conversation today is going to be about freedom from anxiety. Hopefully that intrigued everybody. Is that possible? Is that possible? Can we be free from anxiety? Well, there's a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to get to it. So a couple quick housekeeping activities. One, if you haven't already, please like or follow or whatever the protocol are for the Peace Freedom Connection LinkedIn page. If you haven't, please go over and visit peacefreedomconnection.com and put your email in there so we can make sure you get announcements of upcoming events and content and all that great stuff. I did a poll on LinkedIn recently and I said, what emotions would you most wish for freedom from? And I don't remember them all. There was one was like anger and one was jealousy. But the one that got the overwhelming response was anxiety, worry, freedom from worry and anxiety. It seems that we have that a lot, and that's not really surprising to me. Today, in just a short window here, we're going to talk about something that is a rather complex conversation, and that is, what is the source of our experience of life? So one of the distinctions I create is experience of life and circumstances of life. Experience of life is what goes on inside of me, my thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, even my energy. Circumstances of life include everything that occurs outside of me, other people, other drivers, my boss, my bank account, the weather. If we're going to go after anxiety and seek to create freedom from it, first and foremost, we have to look at where is it created? What is the source of it, right? So a lot of people believe that anxiety is created outside of us. The driver cut me off and that made me upset. The deal didn't go through and that's creating a lot of anxiety. So that way of thinking about it, that way of speaking about it, puts the locus of control outside of us. If anxiety is sourced and created outside of us, well, then we need outer world reality to shift so we can be free from it. I don't have enough time left in my life to help people figure out how to control, manage, adjust, deal with external reality. It's infinite and infinitely variable. Oh, good. Got some people here. So the first possibility I want you to, I'll say, accept is that the source of anxiety is actually inside of us. It's always created inside of us. In fact, I'll go so far as to say nothing inside of us is ever created from something outside of us. So the conversation today can be about anxiety, it can be about worry, it can be about fear, it can be about jealousy, it can be about anger. There is never anything outside of us causing that inside of us. And if there is, well, then we're screwed because we got to spend the rest of our lives trying to make reality fit our notion of what it should be so we don't feel this thing. So that's simply a concept of directionality, right? Where's this thing coming from? If the source is inside of me, I go look in there and I work with it. If the source is outside of me, well, I would want to go out there. The problem is if I get where the source is wrong, I'm going to spend my whole life working on something and have no effect. Hopefully you're here because you've spent a lifetime trying to make reality and the world fit. how you want it to be to stop your anxiety. And maybe you're ready for something different. Maybe you're ready for a new possibility. So we'll talk specifically about anxiety. And this is true for all emotions, but what I want to say is that our emotions, our feelings, these things we relate to as feelings, and specifically the feeling we call anxiety, is actually a product of our thinking, right? There's no space in your body where anxiety is produced other than our brain. We have thoughts about something, and those thoughts have an energetic footprint, for lack of a better term, and we've learned to call that anxiety. When I've got that kind of nervous, humming, buzzing, concerned emotional state, well, it's my mind producing those thoughts. That's really important. If we're going to go and try to create freedom from it, we have to go to where are they created. Well, if they're created in my mind with my thoughts, I want to work with those thoughts. So for years, I've been working with people at the level of their thinking and ultimately the level of their being. I spend a lot of time talking with people about their thoughts, their thinking. When somebody's having an issue or a challenge, what I'll say is, tell me the thoughts that are showing up your head. Let's look at your thinking. For years, what I've said is the human mind produces 6,000 thoughts per day, which is a lot. Recently, and by recently, I mean this morning, I was doing a little Googling because I was like, did I make that up or something? And newer research suggests that our mind, our brain actually produces something on the order of 60,000 thoughts a day. Think about that. See, you got to think about things. 60,000 or 6,000, it doesn't matter. That is a crazy amount of thoughts. And what I know to be true for me and folks that I've talked to is we're not discreetly aware of all those 6,000. There's things that catch our attention. There's things that show up as patterns, but there's so many thoughts that come and go and are very fleeting. So which ones matter? Which one of the 6,000 or 60,000 thoughts translate into emotions, translate into words, translate into actions? Well, what I would say is the ones that matter are the ones we pay attention to. And here's why I say that. We have lots of crazy thoughts, weird thoughts, right? Even look at our dreams. Our dreams are essentially thoughts being produced while we're sleeping. And I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself that certainly in my dreams, I have a lot of crazy ideas. And even throughout the day, I have all sorts of ranging from weird thoughts to uncomfortable thoughts to embarrassing thoughts to shameful thoughts. I got so many thoughts up there. The ones I pay attention to and the ones I think I need to do something with, take action on or not take action on, or make sure the thought doesn't get out, those are the ones that get energized. So fundamentally, our experience of life produced from our thinking is nothing more than a function of the thoughts we consciously or unconsciously pay attention to, or I would say energize. Now here's where it gets interesting. We were taught, we were shown, both we were taught in words and we were also shown by example, our mothers, our fathers, our teachers, our preachers, that the way to get things right, the way to not screw up, the way to get what you want, the way to produce results in the world was to pay attention to the thoughts that sounded like worry or anxiety. We saw our parents do it. We see everybody in society having the thought, I'm worried, I'm anxious, this could go wrong. And then not just processing in our brains, but speaking it. How many times have you heard somebody say, I'm really anxious about blank or blank. I'm really concerned about, I'm really worried about. Well, that's energizing a thought, right? We'll get back to that in a little bit. So 6,000 thoughts a day, the ones we pay attention to, the ones we energize, are the ones that are going to matter, are the ones that are going to create our experience of life. The ones that we ignore, the ones that we just kind of let float away back into the ether, well, they're not going to have any effect on us. I had this morning a thought about, I don't know, a dolphin or a mermaid or something. Something passed through my head. I wonder if there are mermaids. I didn't spend a lot of time with it, so it didn't really affect my experience of life. I didn't sit there for an hour turning that thought over in my head or trying to rid myself of that thought. So that's really important here. Energizing our thinking is a function of working with it to pretty it up or use it in terms of action or how we speak. But energizing our thinking is also created from a desire to be done with the thought, to not have the thought, to be rid of the thought. So any thought that I work with and take action on, well, that's energizing it. I'm going to have an experience consistent with that thought. But also, and this is very important, any thought that I identify as the wrong thought, a shameful thought, a bad thought, a negative thought that I need to be rid of, like I got to take out the trash, that's also energizing. Maybe you can relate to this. You're sitting there on the couch watching movies on a Sunday, and the thought is, I wonder if this deal's going to close. It might not close. And if it doesn't close, then, well, I'm going to have trouble, if not paying my rent and going on the vacation I promised my wife. You have that thought. Okay, that's a thought. That's one of 6,000 or 60,000 thoughts. Do you let it go? Do you let it wander off? No. You start to work with it. You start to energize it. Well, what do I really think? What do I think about the deal? Let me go look at the worksheet. Well, actually, let me go check my bank balance. What's my credit score? We start applying all this energy to that thought, creating and reinforcing this energy of anxiety, right? Worry, concern, all from attention to that thought. I believe all thoughts are just fine, even the crazy ones. And I say crazy with kind of quotes on it, the ones that I probably wouldn't share with people. Thoughts become challenging or require energy or produce an experience of life when we cling to them, hold on to them, pay attention to them, give them energy, start to work with them either to move them forward or to get rid of them. The thoughts that we simply let go of, that we ignore, that we say, thanks for sharing, and allow them to go on their way are kind of like clouds in the sky. They just vanish on their own after a bit of time. So I energize my thinking about anything by the attention I place on it. That could be either working with it to do something, we'll call it productive, or working with that thought to shift the thought, make it a different thought, think a better thought about it, stop thinking that thought. Or when we resist a thought, when we say that thought shouldn't be there, I shouldn't be worried, I shouldn't be anxious. What do I need to do to make myself feel better? All of that contributes to producing anxiety. It actually reinforces it within us. Well, what are our options? Well, instead of energizing thoughts, and this is any thought, but we're talking about anxiety and worry today, instead of energizing a thought, resisting a thought, right? Maybe you've heard the expression, whatever we resist persists, right? When I resist a thought, it also creates persistence. Simply acknowledging that thought and creating it as, acknowledging it as natural, like it's okay to have that thought. I think of it as it grants it safe passage. It grants it freedom to wander off with all the other 5,950 thoughts that I don't notice a day. So attention creates it, energizes it, reinforces it, starts to produce a physiological response to it, right? It's okay to have the thought, I'm not sure everything's going to be okay. It's okay to have the thought, I'm not sure everything's going to be okay. Everybody has the thought, maybe it's not going to be okay. Maybe I'll lose all my money. Maybe I'll get on my live stream today and sound like a kook. This week, as I've been fasting, I've had so many thoughts about, is this harming my body? What if some damage occurs? What if I show up on one of my calls, this week or today, and my mind goes blank? What if I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and I pass out from low blood pressure, right? One of the things that occurs with extended fasting is hypotension, low blood pressure. First time I was ever fasting, I got up out of bed on day 3 or 4, didn't realize it worked this way, and boom, blood drained out of my head. Blood pressure was too low and I passed out. What if that happens? So many thoughts. The difference is those that we work with, those that we want to go away versus those we just kind of leave alone, thank them for their opinion. Well, those don't create any experience inside of us. It doesn't shift our energy. It doesn't shift our mood. They're just thoughts, right? That's sort of one way to think about it. It's just a thought. Just because you have the thought doesn't mean you need to do something about it. We are not our thoughts. You are not your thoughts. Last time I checked, and even whether it's 6,000 or 60,000 going through, if I tried to make all of those thoughts my thoughts and my responsibility, well, that would drive me nuts. The second tenet of Buddhism is desire is the cause of all suffering. Now, in Buddhism, by desire, they don't mean desire a Porsche or a Ferrari, and if I don't have that, then I'm going to suffer. Desire literally means the delta or the difference between how reality is occurring and my opinion of how reality should be occurring. If you have $10,000 in your bank account and your opinion is you should have 20,000 at this point in time, well, that's going to cause suffering. If somebody else is in a bad mood and you have the thought, well, they shouldn't be in a bad mood, or you have the thought, I wonder if it's about me, that's going to create suffering, right? Suffering is a very generalized term. It doesn't just mean suffering in the terms of like a wound or deep pain. Any gap between reality and our thoughts about reality cause suffering, cause pain. Under the umbrella of suffering, we could put anxiety, worry, frustration, jealousy. Those are all variants of suffering in my world. And reality is the way it is. Life kind of moves along. What's it been, 9 billion years or 8 billion years or 12 billion years that this whole, universe thing has been going on. And I have so many freaking thoughts about it. It shouldn't be surprising to me that throughout the day, I'll have some thoughts that don't coincide with reality. I'll have lots of thoughts about it should be this way, should be that way. Why did that happen? Why didn't that happen? What if that happens? It's in that gap between reality and expectation that all the problems are caused, all the emotional frustration exists. And then to make things worse, we start to experience this thing we call anxiety. So not only do we have a thought, oh, maybe I'll run out of money this month, we start having that experience that we call anxiety. So now we have thoughts about, I have anxiety. I'm feeling really anxious. And then it's even better. We speak it. I'm anxious. We create reality with our word, not just our spoken word, but what's in our mind. So the speaking of it, I'm feeling really anxious today. I'm feeling really worried. How many times have you heard somebody say that? What they don't realize is that's perpetuating the anxiety. You want freedom from anxiety? Stop saying crap like that. Stop saying I'm anxious. Stop speaking into the world. I am an emotion. You are not an emotion. You have thoughts about something that the way it is isn't the way it should be, or it should be different, or you have a thought about a future possibility. Well, that's true. I have the thought that I might not be able to pay my bills in December. I have the thought that if I lose my job, I'll be in a lot of trouble. Well, those are just thoughts. At a minimum, stop speaking the truth of, I have anxiety, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm stressed, I'm frustrated, and notice the thinking just as it is. And if you feel compelled to share it, speak the thought. So as we kind of get to the end of this, I want to be very clear about something. Freedom from anxiety, freedom from worry, does not mean you will never have thoughts that we would call worrisome thoughts. It does not mean you will never experience a thought that we would categorize as an anxious thought. If your idea of freedom from anxiety is, well, I don't want to have those thoughts anymore, that's actually energizing them and you'll have more of them. Freedom from anxiety means the thoughts of anxiety that your brain will naturally produce, right? Our survival instinct for many years, thousands, millions, how long have we been alive? I don't know. We've been programmed to worry about that, right? The humanoid that worried whether or not there was a tiger behind that rock survived. The one that had no thoughts about, what if there's a tiger back there? Well, that one wasn't around to reproduce. So even genetically, even evolutionarily speaking, I don't know if that's a real word, even speaking from an evolutionary standpoint, producing thoughts about what if or shoulds or woulds or coulds, well, that's actually important. What is dysfunctional is the fixation on those thoughts and the trying to address things that are further and further into our future, right? Taking a thought about what might happen and beginning to work with that thought. It's a perfectly normal thought to think, yeah, in a year I could be out of a job, right? I have thoughts all the time about what if this coaching thing doesn't work out? Now, if I set upon beginning to work with that thought to make it go away, to make it wrong, to disappear from my brain, I'm actually energizing it. I'm giving it that energy that we relate to as anxious or worrisome. If I simply allow the thought to show up and wander off on its own time, it doesn't really bother me. And I can still take whatever actions are necessary to take at the right time. So freedom from anxiety is not the disappearance and elimination of all thought. It's shifting our relationship with those thoughts. It's one way I would say it is removing any weight or mass from those thoughts, right? If I had a rock and I threw it at you, it would hurt. If I have a feather and I throw it at you as hard as I can, it doesn't hurt. It's just a feather. So I use that as a metaphor for how we can shift our relationships to our thoughts. What if our thoughts weren't rocks? What if they were all feathers? What if none of our thoughts mattered all that much? That's what I strive for. I have, survey said, 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. If I had to figure out which ones are the important ones, which ones are the real ones, I'd go bananas. So I just treat them all as disposable. My thinking doesn't matter as much as I like to think it does. And like I said, stop creating, if you want freedom from anxiety, stop creating with your word and sharing with others, I'm anxious, I'm frustrated, I'm worried. That's perpetuating it. What you can do, because I'm not saying just keep your mouth shut, you can speak your thoughts. You know, I had a thought today that I might run out of money someday. I had a thought today that some harm might come to me from fasting. I had a thought that I might fall apart. Notice what I did at the beginning of this conversation today. I spoke to you some of the thoughts in my head about showing up here today fasting. By speaking them just as thought, not with any attachment to emotions or importance or to do anything about it, I take away all their power. My wife and I play a game in our relationship, and it's called the Thank You for Sharing game. And it's a derivation of something that I saw Brene Brown do in one of her talks, and it's really powerful. In the course of any human interpersonal relationships, one person's going to have thoughts about the other. I'm not sure she loves me. Is she seeing somebody else? You pick the thoughts. Is she upset with me? Does she think I'm an idiot? When we go to somebody else speaking the thought as truth, it energizes it. When we go to somebody else and simply speak the thought as something produced in my mind with no need on their part to relate to that thought or act on that thought, well, the speaking of it releases it, the way I think about it, into the atmosphere, and it's gone. So in this game called Thank You for Sharing, either one of us at any time can initiate the game. And the way we initiate it, it's our code. We say, I have something I'd like to share with you, which is code for, I'm going to speak to you some thoughts that I have in my brain that are showing up about something. And all that's required of you is to hear me and not engage with those thoughts, not repudiate those thoughts, not energize those thoughts, simply acknowledge my speaking of them by saying, thank you for sharing. We can say whatever. We've said some of the, what I would call craziest, looniest, strangest things to each other that everybody thinks, but nobody speaks. They hide them and they make them go away, or they want them to go away, and that energizes them. When you speak them simply, plainly, and they are heard by somebody else, and that person doesn't touch them, doesn't try to talk you out of the thought, doesn't try to convince you that thought is wrong or right or anything, it dissipates. So maybe find somebody to play this game with. Could be your spouse, could be your significant other, could be a friend, right? I have something to share with you. In this moment, I got all sorts of thoughts in my head about how tomorrow the world's going to end and the war in Ukraine is going to, escalate, and we're all going to blow up and die. Thank you for sharing. That's done. You can even feel that sense of relief when these thoughts show up and you just let them out and let them float away on their own. Stop hiding the thoughts. Stop making them go away. Stop wishing you didn't have those thoughts. What if you embraced every single thought that occurred in your head as just a freaking thought and didn't take it personally, didn't assign any meaning to it, didn't feel like because you had that thought, you had to work with it? That's where I want to end. This idea that every thought you have is an obligation to do something with it. That's what's causing the problem. You want freedom from anxiety. Notice all the thoughts you have that normally would produce anxiety and ignore them. Let them go. If something bad's going to happen, you'll know about it. It's like when I used to travel when I was younger. My mom would say, call me when you get there. Why, Mom? Well, so I know you're safe. Listen, here's the deal. If the plane crashes, you'll get a call. Bad news travels really quick. I don't need to keep tabs on that. I don't need to make it my responsibility. So hope this has been fun, interesting, got you thinking, or maybe I should say not thinking. And if you have any questions or ways I can be of support as you're exploring this, shoot me a message, drop me a line, reach out, let me know how I can be of service. Thanks so much. Check out peacefreedomconnection.com. Like this LinkedIn page that Melanie D'Arienzo has put so much love and care into. And we'll see you next month for Tracksuit Thursday. Hope you're wearing yours today. Get a picture up on social media and tag it Tracksuit Thursday. Much love.